Today's summit was already my second visit to China this year, and I think this is certainly testimony to the importance of the EU-China relationship. We have a complex relationship with China, which deserves frank and open discussions to deepen mutual understanding, and this took place today. This was certainly a summit of choices. It was an opportunity to explain clearly our concerns and our expectations to the Chinese leadership, and of course also to seek progress in key areas of our bilateral relationship. Let me start with trade and investment, the economy. This is particularly necessary when it comes to rebalancing our trade relationship. President Xi explained his view on the current Chinese economy. We trade 2.3 billion euros of goods every single day, and this shows that our trade relationship with China is important. But we explained why we see our trade, that our trade is critically imbalanced. Our trade deficit has reached almost 400 billion euros. And 20 years ago, it was 10 times smaller, 40 billion euros. So it shows the trajectory and enormous increase of the trade deficit. If you just look at the last 2 years, the trade deficit has doubled. And this is a matter of great concern for a lot of Europeans. Such imbalances are just unsustainable. The root causes are well known, and we discussed them. They range from a lack of market access of European companies to the Chinese market, to preferential treatment of domestic Chinese companies, and overcapacities in the Chinese production. This overcapacity then is spilling over to global markets, and here we see that different regions are already closing their markets to Chinese products. And this, of course, diverts even more overcapacity towards Europe. Politically, European leaders will not be able to tolerate that our industrial base is undermined by unfair competition. We like competition. It makes us better. It lowers prices. It's good for the consumers. But competition needs to be fair. We insist on fair competition within the single market. Therefore, we also insist on fair competition from companies that come to our single market. And I'm glad that we agreed with President Xi that trade should be balanced between the two of us. Of course, we also discussed the approach of de-risk, not decouple. China, by the way, had a long-standing similar approach. China called it self-reliance, and it was partially included in the dual circulatory approach. I want to be very clear here too. Europe does not want to decouple from China. We have seen a decoupling Europe from Russia for good reasons. We do not want a decoupling from China. What we want is de-risking. So de-risking is about managing the risks we see, addressing excessive dependencies through diversification of our supply chains, so strengthen our supply chain, have more robust supply chain from several suppliers, and thus increasing our resilience. And this is not exclusive to China. This is important too. It is about learning the lessons from both the global COVID pandemic and Russia's energy blackmail. There we have felt, first in the pandemic, but then also when Russia started its war, how painful it can be when the single supplier does not deliver anymore. And in light of increased geopolitical frictions, it is important for us to strengthen and diversify our supply chains. We also discussed the topic of the digital in general, and here specifically artificial intelligence. We see both the big opportunities, but also, of course, the big risks of AI. And the challenge is to ensure both safety on one hand, but also open the door for innovation. Market forces alone will not fix it. and voluntary guardrails are certainly good to move quickly, but ultimately we need binding rules. China has started its global AI governance initiative, and the European Union is right now finalizing its first AI Act to ensure that artificial intelligence complies with our fundamental rights and our values. So even if our governance models are different, we agreed that we should seek to cooperate on artificial intelligence at the global level. Another issue that we discussed was an outcome already of the high-level dialogue we have resumed since the last visit. That is cross-border industrial data flows. As you know, EU businesses have since long expressed concerns about China's rule in this area and the lack of clarity for them. So I very much welcome now China's willingness to establish a mechanism to clarify the rules. This will be a big improvement for European companies. And important is now that we see, after having heard the words, that we see progress on this file. We also discussed the big topic of climate change and cooperation in fighting climate change. As you know, COP28 is ongoing. And I commend China for joining the global methane pledge at the COP28. This is a big step forward. And I think it would be also a strong message by China if it joined the global renewables pledge. As you know, we have proposed to triple global renewable energy by 2030 and to double energy efficiency also by 2030. So I encourage China to join us in this ambition. It's a big success, this pledge, because already in the first week of COP28, 125 countries have joined this global pledge for renewable energy. China is outstanding in deploying renewable energy. It's probably the region where most renewables come online currently, so this is a big success. But on the other hand, and we discussed that open and frankly, we are very worried about the increased deployment of coal power plants in China. We know that one of the most difficult issues in fighting climate change that we face right now is the phase out of fossil fuels. This is the discussion that is ongoing at COP28 in Dubai right now. And of course, we want China to take a very strong position on the question of phasing out unabated fossil fuels by mid-century. Finally, we also discussed the big topic of carbon markets. Actually, the European Union and China have together the biggest emission trading system worldwide. And we have a long-standing cooperation in this area. The European Union started already in 2005 to establish an emission trading system. Now we are moving towards covering 75% of our emissions with a carbon price. And since quite some years, China has joined. We're working closely together, also giving advice on what mistakes to avoid and what positive steps to do forward. Therefore, I'm very happy that we are renewing our Memorandum of Understanding on ETS cooperation. The emission trading system is market-driven, it is well-tested, it has proven its cost efficiency, and it creates revenues that can be reinvested in innovation and reinvested in the developing countries. So all in all, climate change is an area where China and the European Union are cooperating very constructively. Let me turn to Ukraine. Russia's war of aggression is a blatant violation of international law and the UN Charter. And it is a serious threat to European security. And this is why we recalled the need for China to use all its influence on Russia to stop this war of aggression and to engage in Ukraine's peace formula. We also reiterated to refrain from supplying lethal equipment to Russia and to prevent any attempts by Russia to undermine the impact of sanctions. Lastly, we expressed our concern to China about tensions in the region, particularly in the Strait of Taiwan, heightened instability in the East and South China Seas, put at risk global prosperity and regional security. We stand strongly against any kind of unilateral change of the status quo of Taiwan, in particular by the use of force. We acknowledge the One China policy. Regional security will also be increased if differences on the South China Sea are resolved through dialogue and in line with international law. So to conclude, as described, a lot of choices are on the table. And today we had a candid, we had an open discussion, and we agreed to make further progress, specifically in detail, in the high-level dialogues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President.